Hello, everybody. Miss Samantha is occupied right now, so she's not joining us. So I'm going to be the host. I get away with
Oh,
something. Yeah, I'm going to get away with something, I hope. Actually, Melissa and Andrea have told Sam that they'd keep me in line. Anyway, um, we got an exciting show tonight. It's going to be kind of a long one compared to normal because we've got Spec5, Daniel from Spec5 Meshtastic equipment. He is doing a training demo with us, going over all the settings, features, what they do, why you want to set this setting, and everything. We found it really informative, so hopefully we'll see. Um, we got the normal cast of clowns in 5XO, and down below, at least on my screen, is Miss Andrea.
hello, Kilo 2 Echo Zulu.
And over to my left, because she's a left winger. Oh, I'm in trouble. Anyway, Miss Melissa.
Hi, Ki5ICQ.
And Sam, who is missing in action, but she couldn't get off work. They've got a big event thing going on with the emergency management in her county and everything. So she's a little occupied. And JD, who knows where in the hell he's at? JD is he goes by the beat of his own drum and stuff. But we're still waiting on the Bico review and unboxing that he promised us December of last year. So I'm figuring we're almost to the end of the year. We might get it in December. Just he failed to mention which December.
Right.
Anyway, we had a couple things before we roll into my segment with Daniel and stuff. Melissa's got a few things. Andrea, I don't know if you've got anything for us. We haven't had a chance to talk today. So I'll go to you as well and stuff. And I want to throw a question out to everybody. What got you into amateur radio? We'll start with Andrea because she's got the most puzzled look.
What got me into it? My father was taking a class for himself, and he's like, hey, how about come to this introductory class? Because it was really, what is ham radio? And I don't know, it was kind of fascinating because it took place in a fallout shelter. You had to walk down like 3 flights of stairs, but it was one straight set of stairs, no landing, which means if you fell, there was no landing. Um, and it, thinking about that now, they had a movie with a regular projector and reel to reel actual video footage, as they call it. And I guess I decided to give it a try. I was not really aware of shortwave. Well, actually, I was aware of shortwave, but I never listened, and so I went to the class. I found it interesting. The Morse code I found difficult, but oddly enough, I turned into a Morse code operator. So go figure.
Yeah, there you go. Miss Melissa?
I forgot what the question was. What got me interested in ham radio?
Yeah. What
I,
got you into ham radio?
I just think it's in my genes. You know, my grandpa was in the service and he was a big ham radio operator. I didn't find that out until late in my life, but I've always had an interest in it. My brother and I used to play with radios and, the realistic. We were in Radio Shack all the time, and just going through the years, and then with my corrections, being in corrections I've had a radio in my ear for so long, and I don't know. I don't know why. It's just kind of like with flying too. I just always felt drawn to it. So, and then I found you.
No, I'm sorry. We can take you and go fly and stuff too, I'm good at corrupting people and spending other people's money. A lot of wives have blamed me for the amount of money their husbands spend on amateur radio because I'm a bad influence. I had one woman chew me out because I was a bad influence on her husband, and he was spending ungodly amounts of money. And my wife needed to put me on a leash. She held nothing back.
That's just not right.
Yeah. I got into it kind of by accident, but by design too. About third grade, I started collecting old clock radio. Everything was tubes back then. I collected old clock radios, table radios, televisions, and I took them apart to get the resistors, tubes, sockets, and everything. And one little old lady, she was probably in her 80s at the time. And so, ancient I would have been about sixth grade at that point, maybe seventh. And she gave me, I asked her if she had any old broken radios. She said, honey, come out to the garage. And she took me out there, and she had like 5 1930s floor mount radios, RCA and everything. And she goes, I have no idea if any of these work. And then she had a couple tabletops, and one of the tabletops was a 5-band shortwave radio. It also had police band back when the police were on the HF and VHF frequencies there, the low ends. And I think 30 megahertz, if I recall, but it's been a long time, so don't hold me to that. So I got that, and that got me listening to shortwave because I fixed the one radio, and I laid there at night until 3, 4 in the morning every night when I should be sleeping for school, and listening to shortwave, and I loved it. And then our 7th year in Brownwood, Texas, there's not a lot happened in Brownwood, Texas. We had one radio station, and our TV stations came out of San Angelo. So they were not real strong when they got to us. And we were studying Marconi and spark gap transmitters. And I thought that would be cool. So me and a friend took old Model T spark coils, way too much voltage, and used between his house and my house, there was a big farm, and it had a barbed wire fence that went around it. Well, guess what made our antenna? And one rainy Saturday, not probably May, because we were still in school, we spent hours practicing Morse code and stuff. It never occurred to us that the way we listened to each other was we turned on the AM radio. It didn't matter where you tuned. And for hours and hours and hours, we were practicing Morse code with each other from our Boy Scout stuff. And we had the little key that we attached to the spark gap transmitter, Model T coil. And about 6:30 in the evening, there's on the door, very, very eager. And all of a sudden, my dad screamed my name, went out to see what was up and why I was in trouble, because I couldn't fathom why. And there was a policeman and 2 guys in suits. And I'm like, okay. Well, the 2 guys in suits were ham operators. Everybody wore suits back in the 60s. Yeah. So, they weren't as scary as you thought. Of course, I didn't know what a ham was yet, so that was still kind of an interesting term. They confiscated Brian and my spark gap transmitters and made us swear that we would never build another one again. And it turned out that we were wiping all AM and radio and television out for about a 15-mile radius. Well, Brownwood's only 5 miles radius. So, needless to say, a lot of people didn't like us, and the hams were getting completely wiped out. And that's why they DF'd where we came and then got the police to come to the door in case it was somebody antisocial. And then the one ham decided it would be better to have me join them than not. And so he started helping me study for my novice, properly learn Morse code and everything. And then I passed my test October 1968. And well, then the rest has been history. And he helped me build a 6-watt, 40-meter CW transmitter. And I used that shortwave receiver to receive. And so you had to turn the volume down, transmit, turn the volume back up, and pray that you were on a frequency that you could find people on and stuff, because I was kind of rockbound on 40 meters. But that is how I ended up here. And a lot of people are unhappy with the people that decided it would be wise to have me join them. But anyway, it's been a great hobby, and I've loved it ever since.
Oh, that's awesome.
And since you mentioned rockbound, for the people that may not be aware, that's crystal controlled, meaning you had a single frequency that your crystal worked at, or if you had another crystal you could plug in, and you were stuck there. And to make things more interesting, people that you might try and communicate with might not have crystals to match your crystals. So you had to go on and call CQ and then dial up and down the band looking for people that might be answering your CQ. It's a very different time.
Oh, yeah. Operating back in the late 60s, early 70s was vastly different than operating today. It was amazing that we ever made a contact, especially with 6 watts. And then that Christmas, my parents got me a Heathkit HW101, which it was a single sideband, 80 through 10 meters, including 11-meter band. And actually, no, it did not have that. It was blocked out on that by that time. It was another radio I had that had full access to it. But and then I discovered the microphone, and me and CW went by the wayside. So, and I'm now starting to slide back into it. And that's actually Ruth's fault. She would prefer to operate CW on everything. So I figure I need to be able to communicate with my wife. So I'm relearning CW. All right, Miss Melissa, you've got some comments, questions.
Yeah. I'm going to read off these comments from a month ago, and then we have comments from a couple of weeks ago. And if either one of you have any responses to those, then we'll feel free. The ones from over a month ago, W3TUA says, the best improvements I've made to my mobile setup over the years are: 1, to bond all the metal surfaces to one another to lower the noise, and 2, drill a hole to mount an NMO connector on top of the hood, the roof, or the truck, or the roof of my truck. The magnet mounts are convenient, but don't work nearly as well. I do have a rover system with rotatable beams for weak signal as well. 73DE WA5RR.
That
Cool.
I agree with everything he said, but as much as cars and trucks cost today, I'm not drilling a hole in my roof. Uh, we just got done with a car 2 days ago or Friday, and there ain't no way. Well, for one, I can't because like my roost truck, my truck, and now this car, all three of our vehicles have 100% glass roof.
Oh,
There is no
yeah.
drilling or ground plane. um, while that topic just reminded me of something, I'm going to release a special. As Andrea promised, she nitpicked the hell out of my mobile training video, and I was going to use that for a segment, but because our segment on Meshtastic ran so long, I'm going to just do a special short. What is it? About 10 minutes, Andrea?
It's almost as long as your original segment.
Oh, okay.
So
It's an
it's
hour and
fairly
12
long.
days. So anyway, I'm going to do a special release in between, probably in a week or so. That'll just be her running special there, where she nitpicks most liberal like method of just nitpicking. I'm paying back. Uh, the the video and stuff. So I found most of it interesting. I even agreed with her on a couple things. And then there was just a lot where she was just knitting.
Because you
Stuff.
said weird things.
I know, and that's because when I talk ahead of my brain, and my mouth's faster than the brain.
Yeah.
That's why there's and stuff all the time in everything I say. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack us. It just that reminded me of that. Go ahead, Miss Melissa.
Okay, so again, on the video over a month ago, also Mike McDonald says, I got $10 on Andrea taking Greg regarding
I
that.
remember something about that, but I don't remember what it was.
Oh, well, that was in response to my comment saying I was going to do a reaction video, I think.
No, it might have been.
Right. Okay, and the video that was posted about 2 weeks ago, Mike McDonald chimes in and he says, LOL, amazing the number of antennas on Andrea's rover. Also amazing it doesn't burst into flames when she transmits with all that, with all the RF and the wires in that thing. And I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I just call it Zyzaxophone. It's ZYZ axophone, Zyzaxophone. Says full episode with lots of action shots and tons of contacts. It's fun to hear Bob K2DRH and Greg on 6. I've worked Bob on 6 sideband here on FM 29. I'm trying to activate a POTA park, POTA park on 1296 this Saturday. And Dale Ricketson says, great show, y'all. Wow, that rover is one mean machine. Greg, your station is stunning. Looks great. And Mike McDonald chimes in again. And he says, love seeing how fast Greg works. And sometimes he gets tongue-tied. He's way better than me. Maybe an idea for a video sometime is to show what logging software everyone uses and how they log a contact. I have yet to use any logging software as I don't do any contests.
That would be interesting because there's a lot of different options out there for contesting, regular logging, and everything else. Now, here, everything's Mac Logger DX because every computer in this shack is Macintosh. I like my computers to work for me instead of me for them.
I have to, I like the Mac. I don't have near the computer problems I used to have.
Nope. The only computer we have problems with is Ruth has a PC to run WinLink stuff on. And every time she wants to use it, it's updating. Every time she wants to use
Yeah.
it, it's locked up. Every time she wants to use it, it's doing something. And I reach over and I go, boop, with the exception of the other day, which was a disaster. I took my laptop to record the segment. If I left the first 15 minutes of that segment in, uh, people would wonder if I was smart enough to turn a light bulb on, because I got to the thing. We set up the computer or opened up the computer, plugged it into the big screen at Red Cross. We're all ready. He's coming, trying to get in. I'm past the deadline. The computer's dead. So I said, not a problem, because the battery just died. I plugged in my charger, because I did bring it for the laptop. I had plugged a USB-C to lightning cable into it. I grabbed the wrong cable instead of USB-C to USB-C. So we scrambled for about 15 minutes. We finally found a cable, but it wasn't the proper cable. It wouldn't pass enough voltage to charge. So we set up on my phone, and the phone would not send the audio to the television. So we all gathered around the phone speaker, everybody at the meeting, and then the phone crashed. And when we rebooted, Zoom was now sending the audio to the television. So it actually fixed itself by crashing.
Wow.
And we went trouble free from that point on. But man, the first 15, 20 minutes of that, if I left that part of the audio in, nobody'd ever trust me to turn on a light switch. It was
Well,
embarrassing.
that's it for comments.
Yeah.
I will,
Huh? Go ahead.
I will just say, I operate faster than Greg. He just sits there.
Hmm.
That doesn't seem very fast to me.
Yes,
Yeah, good point.
yeah. I that particular contest, when I did the recording of that, uh it was already, we had worked contacts. 6 meters was hopping that season, and between 2 meters and up and 6 meters, I worked from the start of the contest to about 3 in the morning. Set all the squelches so they would not hiss. I had a cot laying in the hamshack room and went to sleep. And about 5 o'clock, I got to sleep about 4 a.m. At 5 o'clock, the squelch broke and 6 meters and 2 meters came alive. So I was in there. And then by the time we filmed that, I think it was sometime Sunday, we were averaging almost 100 contacts an hour out of the
Nice.
ship. And 6 meters was just going, and my brain was fried. I had been going for hours. My mouth was dry. I couldn't get a sentence out. And there was one call sign there. I must have twisted backwards 16 times. um, but overall, it wasn't bad. I think did a lot of contacts that contest. It was probably one of the best. And what was cool is when I posted that video is how many people watched the video or the original version from back in 2013 and said, it was a great video. Thanks for sharing. My favorite part was when my call sign popped up.
All right.
So it was there. Andrea, you got anything to throw out there?
Oh, in general, let's see, a few weeks ago, and unfortunately I won't be able to finish it this coming weekend. It was the EME contest, and I operated at K5N, I believe it was, operating out of K5QE's old station there. Um, when I operated there a few weeks ago, it was a little iffy because us going there have operated before, but there were some issues with the station, and so trying to figure out that without some of the experience was a problem. Less my problem because I couldn't make it there until the second pass, and I happened to get there at a convenient time. Walked in, kind of sat down, and we didn't really expect moonrise yet, but we were getting signals. Started working, and I operated the 2 meter station pretty much the whole pass overnight. It started, I think, about 9 p.m. and wrapped up, what was it, about closer to 10 a.m. or something like that. And I don't remember exactly. And it went pretty smooth the whole time. I did take a nap, and just because it had gotten quiet, I don't know if we were locked out, and that's when the Faraday rotation basically works against you. So you can't, with a linear polarized signal, can't make it work. And so I went and I took a nap, and I came back, and there still weren't any stations. I wasn't the only one operating, but there weren't any stations that had come up on two. And shortly after I got back there, stations started appearing again. We started to get some more. The center of that pass was over the U.S., so people in the U.S. apparently were asleep. So anyway, had a lot of fun. That's been my ham radio adventure over the past month here.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I would like to go operate out of his station one more time, but the biggest thing, the problem is I think all the people that helped build and design that station and know the technical how it's put together have passed away. I don't know too many people that are familiar with the in and out. There's a lot of people that have experience operating his station, but there aren't a lot of people left, I think, that has the experience of how it's put together.
Yeah, and well, there's also a lot of hardware, and I experienced this in the with Rover is um, a lot of hardware means there's a lot of things to go wrong and break. And with all the setups, with all the amplifiers, you get something, sticking relay or something in there, and next you know you've blown up a preamp, and you're half deaf now because you have to get that preamp out of line, completely deaf until you get it out of line, or work around it. So lots of challenges, but we got it on. The biggest thing was getting the antennas on, and during the September contest. And one thing about Marshall Station is he always made EME a significant portion because
Yeah.
he's on the Texas-Louisiana border, not near anybody really. So terrestrially, he's got a long shot at most stations that he works, and so he supplements his multipliers basically in contacts through EME. And we were unsuccessful pretty much with the EME part of the station during the September contest. So it took some work. Others got there and worked on the station before I got out there. I just got to sit and operate. That was the fun part.
Yeah, that's the best part on that. Well, let's go ahead and roll into our segment because this is going to be a really long show this month. So let's go to Daniel and Meshtastic.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, for inviting me. My name is Daniel. I'm from Spec5. We are a Meshradio communications company, based in Florence, Texas, just north of Austin. Greg and his wife came out to our event. Oh,
You there? Can you hear us?
yes, I can.
Okay, we're gonna have to try this again. You're coming on the television now.
All right.
All right, now we can hear you.
Excellent.
So don't break anything.
Okay. I won't touch anything.
All right.
All right, let's try this again. Good evening. Greg, thank you for inviting me. My name is Daniel. I am from a little company called Spec5. We are a mesh radio communications business, specializing currently in Meshtastic. But we have a lot of grand plans to grow this type of hardware and software in this field, with the real goal of just providing hopefully multiple options for decentralized communications for both, consumers, normal citizens, as well as commercial, municipal government entities, really anyone. And the beauty of all of this is that as you get more nodes, more radios out there in the world, no matter what their purpose is for, no matter who's using them, as the mesh grows, the further we'll be able to all send a message. So that's really the exciting part, is that it's not just people at home. It's not just municipalities, towns, government. When you're running on these protocols, every device in the mesh helps the mesh. So yeah, I was asked to go through some of the configuration settings on a Meshtastic device. I'm going to start by kind of going through some of the information on the Meshtastic website in their wiki. And if we need to go into any deeper detail, I do have a device here that we can plug in and flash, and I can show it to you, at least from the Android app. I do not have an iPhone. Unfortunately, the Android app and the iPhone app are a little bit different, but all the settings and configurations are there. But again, I'm gonna can you me to share my screen? Depending on how you have your meeting set up, you might need to make me co-host.
Oh, you may have. Let's see. I got to figure that one out on here.
If you go to the participants list,
Yeah.
and then click on like the three dots next to my name, or like hover over me, there should be like a three dots, and there should be an option to either,
You're now the host.
Oh, perfect.
And we didn't break anything. Well, we lost the video. Hang on. Yeah. There we go. Okay.
All right. So give me 1 second here. Share my browser. And all right. So, oh, there we go. All right. So on the Meshtastic website, there's a lot of information. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of it isn't well well written. Some of it's not as obvious as it should be, because in my eyes, a lot of this Meshtastic stuff is really simple. There are a lot of configurations and settings that you can really dig into and use and play with, but for the most part, the average user doesn't need to play with that many settings. You're not going to get any further distance. You're not gonna get a stronger signal out of the device. Especially here in the US, the device is maxed out. Anyway, so I'm gonna kind of, again, this is right in the Meshtastic docs under configuration. I'm just gonna kind of go down the list here, and kind of explain some of the different settings, because I think it's important to understand what these different things mean. Again, a lot of it isn't as clear cut as I would like it to be. So first of all, on the Bluetooth settings, that is a tab in the radio configuration. A device that has a screen like this T-Beam, your Bluetooth pairing mode, your Bluetooth pin will be set factory set by the Meshtastic firmware to random. So when you go to connect to the device, it will display the random pin on the screen. Your phone app will ask for that pin. You type the pin in, and then your phone is connected. Devices that do not have a screen, like Relay, I know there's a handful of handheld devices that are super small and don't have a screen. Those will require a fixed pin. The Meshtastic default fixed pin is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is an option to disable the Bluetooth pairing pin. I really wouldn't recommend that. In the app, you can set your own custom fixed pin. So again, the generic fixed pin that Meshtastic uses is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but you can go into that setting and change it to whatever you want. Next, I'll talk about channels later. This is probably the one that I'm assuming people have the most questions on, and this is the device roles. So there are multiple roles, and to be honest, and basically what these roles are is a bunch of like predefined settings across all of the different radio configurations. So all the different radio configuration settings. So when you apply a role, it changes a bunch of settings in the background. Client is the standard one. It's what the Meshtastic firmware comes preset with, and for 99% of users, this is the role that you're going to want. There are a few other options. There's a client mute. Again, it says here, it does not forward packets from other devices. So it's really just out there listening and receiving messages, excuse me. And client hidden. There's a tracker, which is meant for GPS tracking. So again, it's configured its settings to be blasting out its GPS location as much as possible. Lost and found sends out a message with the location and the default channel. Sensor, I have yet to see anyone use this, and we're eventually gonna have a couple devices that will be using this exclusively to send sensor data across the mesh. TAC, so that is for the ATAC and ITAC. So ATAC is Android Team Awareness Kit, and then there's iTAC, which is iPhone Team Awareness Kit. So that is a really, really powerful piece of software. It is Google Maps with a bunch of dots running around on it. If anyone has seen any video game, any movie where the special forces guys have the crazy map with all the people running around on it, that is TAC. That is the team awareness kit. It runs on a phone, it runs on a computer, and there are a few settings that need to be set for a Meshtastic device to be both the GPS position shown on the map and also the means of communication between the team members. So that I don't know that much about ATAC, but I could probably spend 30 minutes talking about what I do know about it. It's super cool, but it's really heavy. It's a really heavy software. But there is a specific configuration setting on the Meshtastic device for the Meshtastic device and the Meshtastic app on your phone to communicate with the ATAC app on your phone to give you all the crazy mapping, people following, and waypoints. And there's so much that you can do in the ATAC system. So that's what the TAC and TAC tracker are for. And then you've got repeater and router that are doing in different ways improving the mesh. And I think a lot of people look at repeater and router and go, oh, if I'm gonna have a Meshtastic radio permanently mounted on my house, that's what I should do. And the reality of repeater and router is that they are only good for very dense meshes. Even in Austin, we've got like 300 to 400 nodes that come on throughout the day. I think on average, like all day long, if you're in downtown Austin, you'll see 100 to 120 nodes. That still is not enough nodes to really need the functionality that the repeater and router roles. So if you're going to be mounting a Meshtastic node permanently up on your house, and you don't have 200, 300 nodes around you at all times, the client role is going to give you all the functionality and performance that you need. And scrolling down, this little chart's really cool because it shows you really what these different roles will give you. So we've got Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and serial. Screen, does the screen work? Power consumption, retransmit, prioritize routing, and visible on the nodes list. So this is really important. I've had quite a few customers take a device that has a screen and set router or repeater, and then they're like, well, I can't see the screen now. And then router actually turns off Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and serial. And they're like, well, now I can't connect to the device. And unfortunately, I have to giggle to myself and then inform them what these roles do and explain to them how to get these devices out of those roles. And most of the time that means reflashing firmware and starting from scratch. Honestly, like reflashing and updating firmware is not that difficult. I'd be happy if we've got time, I'd be happy to show that. But again, 90% of us really just need the client role. Most of us are going to want to be able to connect to the radio from Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or serial. Most most of your devices are going to already have a screen on it. You're going to want that. You're going to want that available. You're going to want it to do the retransmit of that's retransmitting other people's messages across your device. Again, which normally, if they're not using the global channel like long fast, you're not going to see that message. Prioritize routing. Again, this is for really dense meshes. And what Meshtastic does is if you've got 100 nodes in a circle, prioritized routing would tell the nodes to not to use 3 hops. So 1, 2, 3 to get across. But with 100 nodes, if it only goes 3 hops without prioritized routing, it could do 1, 2, 3 and not even get halfway across the whole mesh. So by using prioritized routing, basically through devices like routers and repeaters, you're going to skip over a bunch of nodes, send that message as far as you can before it gets hopped again. Again, really only necessary for really dense meshes where you've got tons of devices out there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted there. Under the display configurations, you can adjust the on time and off time of the screen. Basically, it's really there to conserve power. The one thing that I always do like to let people know is that you can change. Why don't they talk? All right, you can change the units. So factory or default setting from Meshtastic is in metric units. I prefer imperial or freedom units because I know what a mile feels like in a car, not what a kilometer feels like in a car. So that is going to be under display settings. It's just a single drop down, and then on the screen of your device and even on the app, it will say the distances in miles instead of kilometers. Then next is the LoRa configurations. Really the main one that people need to know here is the region. And if you've used a Meshtastic device, like this one currently here, you're probably not going to be able to see it, but it's showing me the little message that the region is not currently set. And here in the US, we use the US region. So that gives you the 915 megahertz band, which is actually 902 to 928. Here in the US, we are the highest gain and power limit set to 100% duty cycle. So again, there's really not much to do to get more out of these devices. Yep, you can tune your antennas, have the antennas located in good places, but there's really not a whole lot to do to improve the power of these devices. And then modem preset. So this is talking about your default channel. So again, by default, the Meshtastic firmware sets the long fast channel as your default. That's what they consider the global network. Again, that is only on the US setting. So if you go to another country, you're going to have to change to that country's setting to be able to talk to anyone on it. And another interesting thing is that some of these radios, like this T-beam that I have right here, the LoRa chip on this one will do the 868 and the 915 megahertz. So it'll do about 3/4 of the regions in the world. but I believe the UK and a few other countries use the 433. So this one would not work in those countries. But back to long fast, it's literally as the name of the channel is as simple as it is. It is meant for the longest range and the fastest speed for the message to get there. Typically, that's what most people are going to want. They're going to want the longest range and the fastest way to get there. That's why it's default. There are reasons, again, in very congested areas. If you feel like the perfect example of this would be some like a convention, some type of outdoor event where there are thousands and thousands of people and maybe hundreds of nodes. Where if you are on long fast, if you're trying to talk to people in your group, say like at Hamvention or something, the Meshtastic users actually switched to short fast because they were only looking to transmit messages like a mile because everyone was in this very dense area. And with everyone on long fast, all their messages were going way out and really slowing down the message transfer in the mesh. So by switching to short fast, they kind of reduced how far out their messages would go, and then it actually made the mesh stronger in kind of the short radius. The weird thing about the way the Meshtastic sets these up is that if you have your radio set to the default, which is long fast, you cannot communicate with someone who has their radio set to short fast. They are two different channels. So that's just an interesting tidbit. So there are reasons to try playing with these different like default channels. But yeah, really most of the time you're going to be in long fast. And again, when you're in a very dense area, only looking to communicate with those closest to you, that's when you switch to short fast, to not completely overload the mesh. The guys don't know why, don't know the whole story here, but in the UK, specifically around London, Meshtastic is incredibly popular. And I don't know if that's because of other amateur radio laws or what, but their mesh was getting so dense that messages wouldn't send. There was just so much traffic happening all at once, and what people in the very dense areas found that by using one of these other preset channels, that they could actually get their messages out because the frequency changes just that little bit between each one of these channels. So yeah, they were in a situation where they were forced to play with these other channels because their mesh was just so dense. There were so many people blasting away on long fast that you could never get a message through. And then the last part is hops. So default Meshtastic is 3 hops. The maximum the firmware allows is 7. Again, in most cases, the default of 3 is going to be more than enough. I've heard of some people playing with hop counts over 5 in really rural areas. Again, you have to have enough nodes in between to get to where you're trying to go. But the idea is that your message hops across 3 devices to then get to the last device. So it's technically, if this first radio is the one that sends a message, it basically hits 4 devices, 3 being devices that it's just hopping on. Again, depending on how you're sending the message. If it's in the open channel, all of these devices will see your message. If it's in a private channel and these devices are not in your channel, in your private channel, they will not be able to read that message, but it will send it along forward. It will forward it along for you. And also, if you're private messaging a device, that message can hop across other devices to get to that singular device. Transmit power, all your bandwidth stuff, these are all set by the role in the region. You're not going to need to play with any of that. Again, you're really not going to get any gains from doing that. Network, this is kind of this allows you to connect your device to Wi-Fi. The 2 reasons you would do this are for greater range between the Meshtastic radio and your phone. And that is because Bluetooth is limited to 50, maybe 100 feet if the Bluetooth chip on the LoRa radio is good. Wi-Fi typically goes a lot further. So you'd be putting your LoRa radio on your Wi-Fi. Maybe it's mounted up on the roof, or it's in the house with a long antenna up on the roof. And then as long as your phone is connected to the same Wi-Fi, you can be anywhere in the building, around the building, in Wi-Fi range, and get the notifications on your phone from the Meshtastic device. The other reason to put a Meshtastic device on Wi-Fi is for MQTT. MQTT is how you share your device information, and basically it's nodesless to the internet. And that's a whole nother thing that again we can spend a bunch of time talking about. Now we go into position. So this is for your GPS settings. If your device has a GPS on it, like this T-Beam, it will be enabled when you flash the firmware. You can turn it off. So by disabling that setting, it will turn the GPS module on this T-Beam off. And that is one way to hide your GPS location if you don't want people to know where you are. It also improves your battery life. So why would you want to improve your battery life? If you are using your device as a fixed position node, why energize and pull the GPS for its location if the node is going to stay in one place? So for a repeater or relay that you put up on your house, or some type of base station that you're going to use for, say, a day or two, there is an option to input a fixed position. And that allows you to input a GPS location and like hard code that into the firmware to share that location. So you would get it either from your mapping app on your phone, or if the device does have a GPS on board, you can have the GPS on just so you can get that fixed location and copy and paste it into the fixed position setting, and turn off the GPS module, and then the radio node will share that fixed, like programmed in GPS location. So that's what we do on our relay product. That is our solar outdoor node that you'd mount on a mast on the side of your house. It does not have a GPS in it. And again, we instruct the user to set the fixed location if they do want to share the location of their relay with the mesh. And again, it's all just to conserve battery in that instance. But the other thing is that like a GPS is really good for a device in motion. Power settings, there are some shutdown settings. There are settings for turning off the Bluetooth if there's no activity, sleep settings. These are all things that the factory defaults are actually pretty well set. Again, I think the only instance you might want to play with these is when you're trying to really improve the battery performance. So a node that is either not often connected to power or sporadically getting solar charging, you might want to play with some of these sleep intervals, reducing the Bluetooth connectivity, again, to just reduce the overall power load on the board. But the default settings are really good. So I think that is, so yeah, channels. Oh, and then channels was the last thing. So from the apps, both the iPhone and Android app, when you open the channels tab, again, your default channel, standard Meshtastic firmware, will be channel 1, which is index 0, will be primary, which is also long fast. This is the default channel that all devices, when you flash your Meshtastic firmware, will be pre-populated with. If you change your channel 1 to a different channel, you will no longer be able to communicate on long fast. Long fast has to be set on channel 1. Channel 2 through 8 can be private channels. And those will have each have a unique encryption key that the app will randomly generate for you. And then you can share that encryption key, either the actual text or it will display a QR code for another phone to scan and add that channel. So yeah, you have to kind of manually add devices to a private channel. So I think that's kind of the main overview of kind of the key touch points of a lot of these device configurations. I'd love to open it up for questions now, or if there are anything specific that you guys would like to see. I can connect a node quick and share my screen either from the computer or from my phone, and kind of go through the app or the client, whatever y'all are interested in seeing.
I think I got one question.
Okay, well, ask it.
Yeah, can you, Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Jack Carr, and first of all, I apologize for not making it to MeshCon. I was
No worries.
from surgery, and the doctor, oh, you know how that goes. I'll attend the next one. My question is, what is your advice for dealing with the maximum retransmission reached error upon sending a message?
So your question was the maximum, you said maximum retransmission error?
Yeah,
Yes.
sometimes I'll send it, and then I wait, and then it finally returns the error, maximum retransmission reached.
Give me one second.
Means it didn't go through.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Just refreshing my memory because I have looked into this one. So what the maximum retransmission actually means, and again, some of the way this Meshtastic stuff is set up is a little convoluted. So it doesn't mean that um, the message didn't get sent out. It just means that either the node that you were sending it to, or no one else in the mesh, if you sent it to Longfast, sent back in ACK, sent back an acknowledgement that they received that message. So that is, with the duty cycle and stuff, kind of maxed out on the US. Um, on the US.
I don't know, sometimes I won't get an acknowledgement, and I'm inclined to believe that I need to increase the antenna height.
Yes. Well, so that's an interesting thing to think about. So, and it's actually probably not your antenna. So you have to remember, we have to remember that if we have an amazing antenna and we can blast our signal out to all these devices, and maybe the device that you want to reach has that tiny little 2-inch antenna that comes with all the Heltec and rack wireless boards. That's honestly pretty garbage. Even the factory antenna that comes with this T-beam is not that good. They can receive your message, but they do not have the transmit power because their antenna is garbage to then send you the acknowledgement. So that's the thing that I think a lot of people forget is that if you have a big old antenna way up and you can beam a message 30, 40 miles, we've had a customer get over 100 miles out in the plains on one of our devices. If the guy on the receiving end 20, 30, 100 miles away doesn't have equally as good as hardware, they will be able to receive that message, but not send you a message back and not send you the acknowledgement that they received your message. So that's really what's going on there, is that your message is getting out, but you're not getting that acknowledgement back. And unfortunately, the way they alert you of that is kind of weird. Again, things in the Meshtastic firmware that I feel like they make a lot more complicated than it should be.
Thank you.
My name is John. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir. How are you, John?
I'm good, Danny. Thank you for showing up to do this. We appreciate it. My question is, once in a while, when I try to send a message, it says channel not selected.
I have not seen that one before. Let me see what
When I've gotten that error, it's been because I got clicked off of the primary and I'm not on an actual channel. And as soon as I click on primary, it will go back into.
Yeah, again, like I talked about, keeping the primary channel as your channel 1 is really important. I think that it prevents a lot of that. So if you're playing around, I don't know if you're playing around with any private channels, making sure that those are those are, you know, channels 2 through 8, should prevent that.
Also add that I did do that with direct message. That's,
okay.
That's where I selected from.
Hmm.
That's when I received that message.
Yeah, so I am looking at the Meshtastic discourse right now. I'm not seeing anyone with a good answer. Of course, these guys are also talking about an older version of firmware. Yeah, that is another thing that I don't love about Meshtastic being as open source as it is. You know, the firmware updates. I mean, to me it feels like every 2 weeks. Every time I flash a device for a customer, I have to go back and make sure I'm selecting the latest and greatest firmware. So that's definitely something to consider, is if you are getting any type of errors, because actually we have experienced this, where we installed our solar relay outside. I put it up back in February, and I didn't touch it. I could see it out there on the mesh. I knew the battery was charged. I didn't touch it. And then one day I went to go connect to it from my phone, and the the Android app would not connect to the device because the device's firmware was too old, and they had updated the app on the Android phone so many times that that app would no longer connect to over Bluetooth to the device with old firmware. So I had to manually over a USB update the firmware on that device, because it was, you know, 9, 10 months old at this point. 9 months, 8 months old rather, because they had made so many changes along the way. So that's probably actually the first thing that I would look for is, how many versions old is the firmware on my device. Again, if all of the devices in your mesh are on the same old firmware, you're probably not going to notice any issues. But as soon as you get a sprinkling of devices with the latest and greatest, that's when you're going to see weird little errors, at least in our experience. So yeah, that's unfortunately it's something that you kind of have to keep up with. In general, the devices still work. Yeah, you might just get these kind of randomized errors, or, you know, not getting the acknowledgments, getting that maximum transmission error. I think a lot of that comes back to some of the firmware changes that they've made over time, and old firmware not playing so nicely with new firmware. You're welcome.
I got one more question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, Daniel, do you have any experience or advice for use of a transceiver on airline flight?
I have not personally done this.
I'm planning to do it.
I am going on a plane in a couple weeks, flying from Dallas to San Juan, Puerto Rico. And you can bet your ass I plan to send off a few messages. You know, being in Austin, and I'm sure even some of you guys down in San Antonio get it. A couple months ago, there was a guy that was like weekly flying like Houston to Dallas back and forth, and he would be just blasting out messages. And you would get that message from hundreds of miles away.
I have received aeronautical mobile from the Caribbean.
Yeah, sometimes you got to be careful, because there have been a few yahoos that will spoof their GPS location to be funny. Um, but yeah, there was, I've received a handful of messages where the guy is even putting in his flight number. So you can know that he's on American Airlines flight, 3624 from, even one guy was like flying to Dallas from like New Orleans or something. And he was like pinging along the way, telling you where he was. And I think I got messages from him like as soon as he crossed the Texas border. I was receiving messages from him. So yeah, I do not know what the legality of that is. I know they tell you to not be, using your 4G, 5G and cellular bands. I do not imagine that anything on an airplane runs on the 915 spectrum. So I would kind of have to assume it's safe, but I probably also wouldn't want to be like waving around that I'm communicating on an off-grid device because people might not think it's just a text message device, So that's my 2 cents on that. I don't have any direct experience, but I'll let you know when I go to Puerto Rico in 2 weeks.
I have a question.
Yes.
Our house sits kind of like in a bowl with a bridge on several sides of it. We have an antenna on the one up on the tower that's a really good antenna. And then I have my device down in the house and Greg has his device down in the house. Should I have my device on client or client mute?
So let me try to think if there is a now this is your device in the house.
Right, the little one, on like a 6-inch antenna. There's only one other node I can hit other than the ones there in the house with me or up on our tower.
Yeah, so the idea for client mute is that it does not forward packets from other devices. So
I didn't want Greg's to send one to mine to send it up in the air and add an extra hop in was my rationale, or the other way around.
yeah, so the client so that can happen. I have seen that happen on at our facility where we have multiple devices running because again we're building devices, we're flashing devices, so at any time we've got 5 to 10 devices on a table, and then I've got one device permanently hooked up to the internet, transmitting all of its data to the local Austin Mesh dashboard over MQTT, and then way up on the hill, it's like 758, 800 feet away is our relay. And I know that the device in my hand can absolutely get a message to the relay, but it is hopping across the devices in the shop. So yeah, that's actually an interesting thought. If you do not want to, kind of add to the mesh, the client mute removes retransmit from your device. Now, I don't know. I wouldn't think that it would prevent Greg's device from getting to the relay on the roof. So yeah, that would actually be. I hadn't thought about that, but I would love to hear your experience with that one. Yeah, I hadn't thought about a scenario where you've got, you know, multiple devices, say in a house, in a family, bouncing off a repeater. You know, especially if you're gonna have one that's kind of like always plugged in on the countertop kind of thing. Then yeah, client mute would actually be a good use for that. That way, you know, because its role would be just to receive messages. You know, that's really what client mute is meant for, is something that you just want to receive messages. So if you're going to be sending messages from a different device, then yeah, that's how you would want it. Like I would, you know, I've got a repeater hanging on the side of my house, and part of me wants to have a node inside the house that has a buzzer on it, so that I have that audible alert. And I would, you know, thinking about this scenario, I would set that device to client mute, because it doesn't mute it in the sense of the ringtone. It mutes it in the sense of it's not, when it receives a message, it's not trying to pass it along the mesh, because it'll be inside the house. It's really not going to be anything else to pass it to. And if I have another device, say like my TDEC, it will also be able to see, you know, receive that message that is being transmitted by my relay. So yeah, that's a great question, an interesting situation that I hadn't thought about yet, but that is actually probably the proper usage for client mute.
Yeah, our whole thought was her unit won't be passing my messages on, mine won't be passing hers on. And we both go out through the relay, which is up on the tower, so we're beaming out that way. It kind of forces everything through the relay.
Yep.
Anybody else got any questions? Any parting comments, Daniel?
Just thank you for your time. For those of you that made it to MeshCon, thank you again for coming. We will be doing it again in 2025. We are also planning on hitting up some of the ham radio conventions this year, at least the Texas ones. I think we're gonna shoot for Cowtown. That's one in the one in Fort Worth. And then as soon as the spring temple one, as soon as they announce the date for that one, I don't think they've announced that one yet. We will we'll be there. So yeah, look forward to maybe meeting some of y'all at one of those events.
Well, we really appreciate your time, sir.
You are very welcome. Happy to do this.
And sorry for all the issues at the beginning.
No
But
worries.
we learned a lesson. If you reboot your software, it brings a speaker on the television. All right. Thank you very much.
You guys have a lovely night. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, well, I hope that people found that informative. Meshtastic's kind of intriguing me right now. We've got at the top of our tower, we finally put our relay module up there, so it's relaying off of our beacons and everything and extending our range. It's up 80 feet and over the trees, so that helps, especially on 900 megahertz. Andrea, you got anything else to offer before we wrap up?
Not really much. Just wish the folks out there, those in the U.S., happy Thanksgiving, which you may have see this before or a little after that.
Yep.
Nothing else is coming to mind at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And in less than whatever day the 28th is this month will be my 55th, 54th anniversary of ham radio. Now I'm curious.
Wow.
56 years.
Whoa.
Oh.
Awesome.
Longer than a lot of people have been alive. And
Wow.
not long enough. I think the oldest ham I ever met was Bill WX5W, who was licensed in 1960 while he was in the Air Force. And he passed away about 5 years ago, but he had quite a few years under his belt too before he passed away there. Hopefully I've got a lot of years. I'm pushing for 70 years of ham. Maybe.
So I think the longest running ham that I knew was Bob Morris W2LV. He was one of my mentors. He was, I'm pretty sure, the original license holder of that call. That was not his original call, but he was licensed prior to World War II, doing spark gap, and I knew him in through into the 90s. I think he passed away in the late 90s. He was 90 years old at the time, and I mean, had been a ham, geez, you go back 6 years, that'd go back into the 30s, and I think he was actually active into the 20s.
For the net. Well, that's pretty cool. I think the oldest hams, along with Bill, that I knew were W3XO, Bill Tyman, and Bob Heil K9EID. You know, he'd been around. Both of them were licensed in the 60s. And everything. Well, one of the things I want to do, this is the last show for this season because our season starts for some reason in December. I haven't quite figured out why we did that instead of waiting until January, but we did. So anyway, December will be the start of our new season. And we've had a lot of requests for a segment. And we're going to do a segment on every show for next year, all 12 months. And it's going to be, I got my license, now what? And we're going to start from, you got your license, and we're going to work you all the way up to having Rover.
Yeah.
Not really.
So, I mean, in years past, we were in December for like a blooper reel or something like that because everybody's schedules were so busy through.
Well, our very first show was.
Yeah.
No, actually, our first show was November.
Yeah.
And because then the second show we did the first Christmas thing. And then after that, for some reason, we just set December 1st as starting our new season on that. So anyway, we're going to take everybody. Yes.
Before we go, I just want to say for the point that you brought up about, I just got my license, now what? What would really help us to answer that question is if in the comments you would put down why you got into ham radio, what you thought you might do with ham radio, what you're wondering you could do with it now, because that will help give us some focus and some ideas of how we can answer that question.
That is an outstanding comment and statement, Ms. Andrea. So I'm happy that we had you on board to bring that up because that was a good suggestion. It'll really help us help you. But anyway, for next season, it will be got my license, now what? and we are going to do entry level at a brand new ham training at least half the show for the rest of the year. Melissa might actually start using her ham license now. We're going to use Melissa as an example.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Good night. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next month.
7-3.
73.